3, 2, 1. Hey. Oh, you know, that's my little...
Is that the lead? Is that the lead?
That's my little production voice.
Hey, wait a minute. We're live on...
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
We're live.
Let me just do this piece right here.
It looks like we're live.
Okay.
Yeah, looks like we're live.
All right,
so
I'm live.
Yeah, so, you know, I always tell our viewers to yes, he says, Bryan, you're watching yourself.
I'm watching myself. That's... Okay, I got it.
Yeah, that's it. So, you know, everyone chime in if you hear us. Tracy, you are our co-pilot today, Miss Tracy, the missus.
The missus.
So, Tracy, if you see anyone asking questions that we may, you know, like if they want to know where we're located, all that good stuff, Tracy, please be the co-pilot. Let them know. Give us some thumbs, hearts. If you can hear us, we want to make sure the sound quality is great. Because I can yell all through the show just to make sure that you all hear us.
And then I mean I'd have to yell back. And
right,
make sure that, okay, I got you. We're going to do this. Okay, all right.
Welcome everybody to the People of Power. I am the host and creator, Kitty London. And I am sitting next to none other than...
I say it or you?
Well,
okay.
You can say it.
None other than attorney Bryan Boysaw.
Bryan Boysaw. You know, a lot of people were actually interested in hearing you this evening. They were pumped up about you.
Okay, all right.
So I was like, I got to do some research on this brother. They must know some things I do not know. Because they're like, I want to hear Bryan. I want to hear. So you got some fans.
Okay, all right. They know all of them know I'm silly. That's what it is.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Okay, so just in case you get too silly, I did bring the fan.
Oh, not the fan.
I brought
not the fan.
The infamous People of Power shade fan for Mr. Boysaw here. If he gets out of hand with his little shadiness.
My shadiness. I'm not a shader. But
you know, it's so funny because the ones that say that all the time, usually, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to end up shading?
Yeah, you
that's because you will make me shade. I've been watching you.
Okay, well, you know. So on the People of Power, we like our audience to be engaged, educated, most of all, especially with attorneys. It's a lot of education that I want you to give our viewers, things you can answer, please. And people, please do not be afraid to ask this man questions. He's here for the hour, or maybe a little more, but we'll see. He's here for the hour, and yeah, we want to highlight you. So we're going to kind of do what we call our background check.
The background check.
We got to do the background check on you. Hey, we know he's married to a beautiful God sister. Okay, that's a shout out to Rochelle Young.
You see who the star of the show is already. Tracy Cartwright Boysaw, right? You see what's going on.
Well, you know, we have to give honor to the missus.
Yes, we do. And we will.
Because we do a lot of work behind the scenes. So.
I'm going to give my testimonial on that, and yeah, we're gonna give her praise this evening.
Okay. So please, like I said, please type in any questions you have. We'll try to answer as many questions. Right now, we're doing the background check. Mr. Charles says hello to you.
I love Brother Charles. Hey, Charles, how you doing, good brother? It's a very good brother right there.
So where do you want to start? You want to start?
I want to start by saying I am excited, actually, and happy to be here with you. I've been watching your show. I don't always get to watch it live. Sometimes if I'm out and I'm either about this time of day, I'm started trying to walk, trying to get body beautiful again.
Oh wow! Okay.
And so
more your body
I'll either start watching, you get a call or a text, but then I'll come back. But so I've been watching your show, and I'm just excited to be here.
Thank you.
That's the very first thing I wanted to say. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. And that's a good thing about the live shows, because if you can't join at that time, people can always be back. So still, if you have any questions once we're gone, he's tagged, and he'll be able to still go back to you and answer the questions. Okay,
so you were asking me about the background.
The background check, yes.
All right, now I'm going to try to do the background check in a way that doesn't bore everybody, and it's the same. You know, backgrounds can be interesting. Okay. Listen, I was born in Virginia. I have two older brothers. My oldest brother, Lewis, he's deceased, and then I have a middle brother, Randy. Those are my brothers that grew up in the house with my mom and dad. We moved down to West Palm Beach, Florida, to Riviera Beach in 73. And in 73, that was right when they were desegregating the schools. But I also have another brother. I hate to say half brother, but I have a brother who didn't grow up in the house with us, my brother Donald. So it's me, my brother Randy, my brother Lewis, and my mother Mary, and my father Joseph. My parents separated probably in about 70, and then my dad moved to Florida. So he just always had it in his spirit that he didn't want another man raising us. My parents reconciled. They reconciled. He came back up got us, piled us all in the cars and the U-Haul in the back, and we drove to Florida. Back then, my brothers and I said, man, we get to Florida, we're going to eat oranges every day and go to Disney World, all that good stuff.
Oh, that was the American dream.
That was the American dream back then. So we moved to Riviera Beach, lived there until I went to Grove Park Elementary, lived there till I was about till the 6th grade. And incidentally, I go back that far because that's where I met my wife, believe it or not. Okay. I met Tracy in the 2nd grade. Her aunt lived right across the street.
Oh, wow.
From mine.
You've known all your life.
Well, but at 7 years old, immediately I knew I loved this person. Can you believe that? At 7 years old. Can you believe it?
Oh.
And so we you can't really have a relationship
in the sandbox and you all googly eyed.
In the sandbox.
Okay.
And so we just kind of, folks, hey, that's my girlfriend, the stuff you say in elementary school. But we actually started dating in middle school. I went to John F. Kennedy Middle School.
Okay,
and
Viking.
I'm a Viking. You know about the Vikings?
Well, I was a little maroon devil.
Okay, all right.
Little devil.
And then we dated all through high school. So I went to North Shore High School. It's now the School of the Performing Arts,
yes.
Middle School of the Arts. After I graduated from high school, I went out to Iowa. And there I went to a small Methodist college, Cornell College. It had a program called One Course at a Time. And basically, that's how I matriculated through college.
Did you use a big word?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's how I got through college. I'm
okay,
sorry.
Thank you.
All right. And then after that, I went to the University of Iowa's Law School. I entered there in 1988, graduated 91. In the spring of 91, November 91, I get my bar scores back. I pass. So
kudos to you.
Yes. And so I immediately started working for a lawyer in town. His name is Malcolm Cunningham. And it meant big shots out to Malcolm, even if he's not watching this show. That's where I learned how to be a lawyer in a whole lot of regards. I did that for about a year. Then from there, had a good friend in town, Dawn Wynn. She's was married to a friend of mine back in the day. We used to hang out a lot and pretty tough, Richard Riles. But through just trying to give everybody the connections from back in the day. And so from there, Dawn told me about a job at the county attorney's office where she worked. And so that what really led into me getting my first governmental job. From there, her husband, Richard, and I went into partnership, and we were partners probably for about 3 to 5 years, somewhere in that window.
Okay.
After that, I moved over to an office off of Village Boulevard. You know where the Panera Bread is over on Village?
Yes.
And for those guys that hang out at the smoke-in with me, over in that area.
Oh, yeah, in the cut.
In the cut.
Oh, okay.
In fact, part of the smoke-in used to be my office back in the day.
Okay.
And then, so in trying to make this short, in 2007, my wife and I had decided we were going to build a building or buy a building. And so...
Well, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
How was that conversation?
How was that conversation?
Yeah. You just say, baby, we're going to build a building. Okay.
It had been 10 years where I was renting.
Okay.
And the rent was probably back then about $25 a square foot. I had about 1,000 square feet, 1,100 square feet. You do the math.
Okay.
And so we were like, is this the right move? From a business standpoint, long-term investment. And she and I are big into the idea of legacy building. We've got 2 boys, my youngest son, Jonathan, my middle son, who's named after my namesake, Bryan Jr. And we were talking about, just legacy building. So the conversation came about the rent we were paying and then just the idea of maybe there's a better way to do this from a business standpoint. So we said, hey, look, we would get in the car on the weekends and just ride around town and kind of envision. And
you know what? Everybody that does that, it works. It's like the law of attraction. I noticed a lot of people have been saying that lately.
Which part?
The driving around, envisioning even houses or buildings. There's something about that. Like
it is absolutely key to whatever your level of success. I believe the biggest thing, particularly, I believe that the biggest thing for kids, I know it's the biggest thing for me, is exposure. Exposure allows you to dream in a way that you can't really do. Sometimes you can't put your arms around what the idea is until you see somebody else do it.
Doing it.
So you're absolutely right. That was really key for us. We just were dreaming. We were like, hey, well, what would we like to have? What would we like to do? So we ultimately ended up buying. We would go. We would look at a place. We would always come back by this building. We'd go and look at a place. We'd ultimately come back by this building. Okay, we're at 501 North Rosemary Avenue in the historic Northwest. Now, what's significant about this building? Back in the late 70s and through the 80s, her grandmother, Sarah, was the operator of this place. It was Economical Sundry. So this, where we're sitting right now here, through those doors right there, this is where the community used to come to buy, their cigarettes, their sodas, get their cake, their food, just whatever. They would do it here, play their lotto, it was the community store. And then after she stopped operating, her dad, the great Coach Cartwright, who he actually coached for a rival team back in the day when Tracy cheered for Twin Lakes. Okay. For the Twin Lakes folks out there.
Go Tracy.
And at the time, I was over at North Shore playing basketball for Floyd Andrews. But it was this building right here has that historic significance, not only for the community. It's a 1932 building. So back in the day, it was occupied by Dr. Jenkins, who was a pharmacist and just a store operator and a businessman. But then from them it changed hands to Tracy's grandmother, to her dad. And so Tracy and I ultimately said, you know what, this is the right move. So we bought it from her. It was her cousin Mike Albritton, Limo One, Bus One. Okay. And also we bought it from him and her dad and her mom. Those were the three partners at the time.
Wow. So it was a family venture.
It has been a family venture from then till now. Even in fact, the building itself was built by one of my good middle school friends, Frank Kendrick of New Jack Construction. And my dad actually served. My dad Joseph served as the building manager. So he made sure that things were moving on time. Every house that we've ever built in, my dad's not a contractor, but every house we've ever lived in, my dad built it. From the time I probably was 5 or 7, they separated. He had built a house when we moved down here, built a house by North Shore. And then by the time I went away to law school, he built a house out in Palm Beach Country Estate. So
he probably wasn't certified, but he was a contractor.
Well, he was something. Well, when you build your own home, you can act as your own contractor.
Right.
But he learned just through observation, which is incredible to me. He would work all day as a butcher in a place called. They used to have this place called Pantry Pride.
Pantry Pride, yes.
You know about Pantry Pride?
Pantry Pride, it used to be in the old mall back in the day.
You look like you're guessing. No. No. You get ready to put the fan on me. Listen, the Pantry Pride used to be. It was a regional grocery store, but here in town it was at the Twin City Mall, the Palm Beach Mall.
Palm Beach Mall.
And so he would always work at the two of those. So he would work all day there. Butchers, you get up you're at work about 5 or 6. He'd work all day, get home about 4. If I didn't have homework or I wasn't participating in the sports, now mind you, when he's building our first home here, I'm 8, 9. If you didn't have homework or you didn't have sports, you had to, at 4 o'clock, he'd pick us up when he's getting off work, and he'd take us over to where he'd build that house, and he'd work till about 10 o'clock at night. Jesus. So that was the modeling, but it did another thing, because I didn't want to go work at the time. I was studying.
You knew what you didn't want to do. You knew what you didn't want to do.
I'm like, Dad, I got practice today. Oh, Dad, I got homework. So I had a lot of homework. I was making up homework.
Did you realize almost 3 years ago today they did the article for you in the Sun Sentinel? Did you realize that?
No, it's been that. Really?
It was April. Yeah,
wow.
Yes. It was April. It was like around the 15th because I pulled you up.
Okay,
I looked at,
all right.
And it said Bryan Boysaw basically said that a regular check didn't soothe his yearnings to be an entrepreneur. So the poker playing Boysaw.
Yes. See, they got a yes out of me already. Poker.
The poker. But that was, it's a great article. So if anybody who's looking gets the time, you can Google it. You can YouTube it. But I saw the one where Mr. Kendrick was in it. He was talking about how he helped build it.
Right. He was our general contractor. Right.
So let me ask you a question, because hopefully one day this will happen for me and a lot of you who are watching it. But when you ride up and a building has your whole name on it, what was that feeling when you first
Oh, well, when I first built it, didn't have any name on it.
Okay. Well, we gotta start somewhere.
It had our name on the mortgage.
Okay. Okay.
And it's still on the mortgage. But listen, it is such a proud moment for Tracy and I to have grown up in this community, gone away, gotten education, afforded the opportunity to come back, and then invest in legacy, invest in our community, invest in ourselves, and to have a building where at the core it's the two of us in terms of that vision. Man, I'm very proud of it. I know
I would be. I mean, I'm like, ooh, you.
I know if she was sitting here with me, she's very proud of it too. She always, sometimes when I'm talking, she says, she'll be in the background, Grandma Sarah, because she's so big into legacy.
Right.
And just in terms of what Grandma Sarah meant to this community, what her dad meant to this community. And she always wants to make sure that we acknowledge that history and the shoulders we stand upon. In fact, we have been trying to figure out, we're going to plaque the building at some point in time on the exterior, just in terms of that history. It's kind of one of those things, one of those things we want to do. But it's a real proud moment in both of our lives and our families' lives. So thanks for remembering.
No, I do.
That was the
Sun
Sentinel was the Excalibur Award.
Yes, the Excalibur Award that you won. You won actually quite a few. Like I said, I was doing my research. I'm like, okay, you're quite awarded. But we'll talk about that, because this is your hour. This is what the people of power is all about. We highlight movers and shakers, CEOs, entrepreneurs, people who are doing big things in the community.
All right.
And when you ride up, and you see your name on a building, that's something to be proud about.
All right, she's gonna make me smile.
I'm gonna tell you. Listen, I'm giving you flowers while you can sniff them.
Hey man, we're getting ready to have church up in here. All right.
Hey, got my church fan. I'm a church fan, but I just wanted to say that for people, because it was a great article, and I was like, wow, you're really doing some great things.
I don't know if everybody knows this. I won't go too far down this path, but I don't know if people know we're in the historic Northwest, and this was the community where back in the early 1900s, where after you get past the idea, whatever the story of the sticks is, when black folks came off of Palm Beach, this was the place where black people had to be. They had to be here in Pleasant City or here in the historic Northwest. Well, back then it wasn't the hood. It was
nice, and then it turned into
It turned into the hood, but it was a prominent, internationally worldwide renowned location. Down the street at the Sunset, probably in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, it was the place where Billy Eckstine, Billie Holiday, Cab Calloway, Lionel Hampton, all of those performers would come. This was the last stop on the Chitlin circuit before you went to Miami, and so there was no place for black folks to really stay between here and there. So this was a bustling hub. You hear stories about this location. And ultimately, the city of West Palm Beach made this area by ordinance the black area from the 1920s up to about the 1960s. And one of the things that they did was that it was unique for Florida and for segregated towns. One of the unique things about this whole idea of desegregation is white folks could not own property in the historic Northwest. It was only owned by black people. Not a consolation when you're dealing with the whole background of desegregation, but relative to what typically would happen in communities is the communities would be owned by white folks, and they would rent it to black folks at usurious rates. Here, black folks owned everything, so this was really the spot. So it's going through.
Coming back now.
It's coming back. It went through a period of just significant super degradation, but now. Right across the street, they can't see it, but right across the street, they're scheduled to build an Aloft Hotel. Behind it, I've heard talks of an Indigo Hotel, and also all of this stuff right here in this field right in front of me. They've invested $10+ million in the development of the Sunset. So this corridor right here, they're outside right now doing a tattoo. It's a very expensive tattoo, but nonetheless, the idea is to connect downtown City Place to the north end here.
Wow.
So
okay.
this will now. Tracy and I didn't have the idea that all of that development was coming because we're going on year 8 now. But we're just just through perseverance and having a commitment to it. That wasn't our vision, but hey, it's working out that it is going to be a super high-end developed area. So.
And you have a beautiful office.
Thank you so much.
I just have to say this, beautiful decor. The wife had something that...
The wife had, my dad and Frank, they dealt with the building and the edifice. My wife did all of the colors, all of the decisions from the ceiling down to the floor. So, anything in here that you like, it was her vision.
Her vision to do it.
Her vision to do it. Absolutely, absolutely. She's been a real champ. She's actually technically our community relations person. So if people are asking for donations or support from our firm relative, that's the primary person who makes those decisions. Anywhere I am and I'm getting an award is because she's allowed me to just be in front and so on and so forth. She's always been that way. Very humble spirit, just a loving spirit. She's quiet at first because she's sizing the person up, but ultimately in her core, she just loves this community. She loves her family. She just wants everybody to do well. She wants everybody to be educated well. She wants everybody to have a great life. So,
I think you need to give her an award after this.
Oh, she gets an award after this. She requires her super awards.
Rochelle, he's saying because she's awesome. So if you're just joining
she is awesome.
The People of Power show, I am sitting next to Bryan Boysaw, attorney Bryan Boysaw, and he's been basically giving us a background on kind of how he started because I always like to know the story. And for you to be an attorney, there's so many areas of law. Oh my God, there's so many areas of law. What attracted you to the area of law that you're in now? And then also tell them what you do.
We got to put Iva in that.
Okay.
Iva Dozier's in there.
Okay.
What attracted to me to this? When I left here, when I left North Shore in '84, I had planned to go to school to be a doctor. My math background or whatever it was wasn't. Once I got to cellular molecular biology, I don't know if it was 2. I think 1 might have got me.
So the math was like,
So I came home one Christmas. I'm like, Mama, I don't. And talk about exposure. I have a cousin who's a neuroradiologist, and so I go to his house when I'm like in the 5th grade, and it's a house that goes on for days. Brother Elbanks, and. When you see something, that gets in your spirit about what you want to do. So that lasted me all of my first semester of freshman year.
When you realize what it's going to cost for you to get that.
Well, just the struggle of the academic
the educational cost, meaning mentally, because that's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work being a lawyer.
Oh, I know. I'm not listening.
It's a lot of work being a lawyer. If you're doing it well, if you're doing it at a high level.
Yeah.
So, in any event, that Christmas I come home, my mom says she sees a lot of the kids coming in with a general degree, a business degree.
Okay.
My school afforded me the opportunity to switch, and I could do a dual degree. I have a business BA and I have an economics BA. And so I'm talking to my dad that same holiday, and he says something simple to me. He said, listen, if I had it to do over again, he says, 2 things always occurred to me. He said, listen, people are always going to be sick, and he said, they're going to go see a doctor. And that was off the table. He said, and people are always going to be in trouble, and they're going to go see a lawyer. So in that path, and this is the beauty of parents and how they can speak something into your life, I had a business law class. Killed it. I knew that was it. So that was my sophomore year. I said my freshman. That was my sophomore year. So from my sophomore year forward, I knew what I was going to do. From that, having one idea of what I thought I wanted to be, to finding the passion of something that I love. So that got me going. I always wanted to do accident injury, probably out of the fact that I used to want to be a doctor. It was one of those things of, every case I get an opportunity to learn a little bit of medicine or to play doctor in my analysis and my differential diagnosis and all that stuff. But I think at the core it was that experience, the stress of the medical pursuit not working out, parents speaking love into me, me listening, and then having that moment where I'm like, you know what, this I love talking to people, I love helping people. That always stuck with me. So I think that's how I ended up in personal injury.
Personal injury.
Accident, injury, negligent security. And so, you know, if I were continuing that line of thought, when I came back, I applied to some of the big firms, the what they call majority firms, white firms.
Okay.
I applied to those, didn't get any takers. I ultimately ended up getting the transitional opportunity when I mentioned my friend Dawn earlier. When I went to the county attorney's office, one thing that happened unique there was I handled all of the cases where someone was injured on something to do with county business, and so the county would be sued. So I ultimately worked my way up, and I was the lead PI attorney, defense attorney for the county. So listen, I got all of the big firms, they're suing the county, so I'm learning everything. And I'm so crazy and green about it. I'm trying cases back then that are 2, 3, 4 weeks long, essentially by myself as the trial attorney. And anybody that's listening to me knows that's a no-no, because you know you can have 30 witnesses in that period, and to prepare, usually what happens is you do kind of a leapfrog. One lawyer will take witness 1, another lawyer will take witness 2, and you kind of work that way throughout the trial, because to get ready for the Q&A on one witness and then to sit down and have to do it again, it is just monstrous. But that was the way I learned. So I really had a great, significant amount of trial experience over at the county. But that was as a defense lawyer. I had an opportunity. That's when.
So you were, it's like a public, is it almost
well, a public defender, okay, civil law, that's where it's really about money.
Gotcha, right.
Criminal law, when you start talking about public defenders, assistant state's attorneys, you're over in the criminal realm. So that's a state's attorney. I was working for the Palm Beach County Attorney's Office. Years ago, they used to do criminal, but by the time I was practicing, Dawn was over at the office. We were just strictly civil in terms of how the work that we did. So when I left there, that's when I switched and went full time. Personal injury plaintiffs, representing plaintiffs. Okay. So I've been doing strictly plaintiffs work for going on 22 years.
That's a lot of experience.
That's a lot of
22 years.
22.
Now listen, if you are not on here asking questions, something is really wrong with you. Even though you do what they call, free consultations, but you do not have usually access to a 22-year veteran attorney that can answer your questions. So if you have any questions, or you know someone who might have some questions, share the video, because he's here. Whatever he can answer, I'm sure he will. But I was reading some of the things on your website, and you have the proven success. So I'm not like saying anything that I can't mention. Right. It looks like some people are missing out on some money. Meaning, okay, let's go here real quick. $350,000 for a client that was rear-ended by an insured driver. You know how often that happens? How many times, and maybe you can educate us more on that, because I know we are in the era of sue. Everybody, if I slip and fall, I'm gonna sue you. Everybody is sue. Okay. So when you read things like that, a client just got rear-ended by an insured, I'm sure it was probably more to the case, but I know people who've gotten rear-ended and they don't even think about suing. They just say, I was all right, But I'm like, you might have missed out on. Well,
listen, I don't encourage anybody that's not hurt to pursue litigation. But if you're hurt, and the crazy thing about auto accidents, particularly rear end accidents or T-bone accidents, is you can feel fine immediately after the accident. The doctors will talk to you about your adrenaline, and then what happens is your body starts to develop inflammation, and the injuries that you have, you don't always know that you have them immediately.
That you're really injured.
Because of the excitement, the nervousness, the fear, the adrenaline that we talked about. Most people that are in accidents where you don't break something, they all will recount to you, lawsuit or not, man, the next morning when I woke up, I couldn't move.
Dr. Taylor is saying, she's a chiropractor, she's saying everyone needs to know this information. This is good.
Absolutely. So I nowadays it's important for people to know, it didn't used to be this way, but if you get in an accident, you got 14 days to get to a doctor. Okay. If you do not get to the doctor in that 14-day window, you lose your PIP benefits, which is everybody self-insured that owns a motor vehicle or has a vehicle registered in the state of Florida. You're self-insured in the sense that you have something called PIP insurance. Okay. PIP insurance, right now, based upon some legislative changes, again, if you don't get to the doctor in 14 days, you lose upwards of $10,000 in benefits. Wow. So go to the doctor if you're in an automobile accident, regardless, because it at least will establish some baseline for your ability to collect this money that you've been paying all these premiums for, and you don't want to get 14 days out and realize, man, I just thought that would go away. Let a professional look at it, let a professional examine it, let them put notes down, and then that way, if it's day 15 and you're like, this is just not going away, I can't tough this one out, you don't find yourself going to the doctor and all of your benefits, that $10,000 worth of benefits, being denied. Right. So it's so critically important for folks to get to the doctor the very first moment you have an accident.
So basically, if you're obviously if you're in an accident and you have to go via ambulance or whatever, then you're there. So you're good. You're covered in for reporting it because you're already there. Yeah. These are the people that kind of feel like, oh, I got whiplash. Oh, it wasn't nothing.
I don't use the term whiplash. I just don't use it.
Okay.
Well, I don't use anything that lessens or has a negative connotation. You know, whiplash injury. Listen, whiplash is you have muscles that are torn, you have ligaments that are torn, you have soft tissues in your body that are torn and damaged in ways that you can't fully appreciate. And it's really, when they say whiplash, it's just the flexion and extension of the neck or the back or the body moving in ways that are unnatural. Look, we all recognize that when a football player gets hit and you see that neck,
snap,
that's imagine a 3,000, 4,000 pound car hitting you. You might not realize that that's what happened, but your head has typically been snapped back into your headrest, and that's your brain is sloshing back and forth. So it is a real serious phenomenon. So they're not allowed to use that term around here. Okay. We talk about what it actually is in our demands, and anytime we're talking with an insurance company or somebody who's at fault.
Gotcha. Okay. So another one, I was like, wow, 125. I'm gonna get to the big one too. I'm gonna get to the big one. $125,000 verdict for wrongful entry into a home by local police department.
Okay. Right.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Oh my God. Like.
Most people have just from TV. They recognize you can't come in here unless you got a warrant, right? And that's true, unless there's something called exigent circumstances. Okay. So if somebody didn't run up into your house, ahead of the police officer, police officers you have constitutional rights, and they have to have a warrant, a search warrant, or a seizure warrant to take things in possession. But to enter your house, they need to have a search warrant. So you are free to tell an officer, no, you can't come in. In this instance, that's what my client attempted to do, but the officer bulldozed through the door, over the client, and all kind of mayhem broke loose. But I've had several of those. And
people don't know their rights. I think they just kind of see an officer and they say, well, he has a badge, so I need to do whatever he tells me to do. And I think this is why what you're telling us is very important. To know your rights as well.
Well, instinctively, officers will come to your door. I've had cases where officers say, yeah, I've got a warrant, and they have a piece of paper in their hand. Well, most people, if you haven't been through that, you don't even know what to look at if they showed you a piece of paper. You don't know whether it's a warrant or not. But it turned out they didn't have a warrant. This person just had a friend who happened to know enough to call me. And the fact pattern grabbed me immediately, and so we did our discovery and found out that there was no warrant. So always listen. I say, for me, for the type of work I do, here goes the thing. I think it's great what you're doing with this show. You're doing a lost leader, and that's the new business model, like Chance the Rapper or Dr. Eric Thomas. Those guys create a product and they give it away. They monetize off of other streams of revenue. So, you've got a brand, and you're building it with this archive of information, and each interview is more riveting, and it gets better and better, and they're informative.
You're making me blush.
And so I happen to be in one of those business models where, I don't charge my clients typically by the hour. I have one or two cases, and those are unique circumstances.
Wow.
I charge, it's a free consultation, and if I don't get your money, then I don't make any money. And so I have to be real careful and be real selective and be real thorough.
Right. Which cases you choose?
Because I play on cases. I play financier because I'm going to invest Boysaw Law's money into your case, and sometimes it can be on some of the cases you've talked about so far. It can be 5, 15, 20,000. On some of the higher end cases, you can get up to 100, 150 that you have out there of your own money. And and if you ultimately end up with a jury of folks that watch Fox News all the time, they don't think anybody should be suing unless it's them. And so one juror could wipe out an investment of 150 for people who do the work that I do. One juror can wipe out an investment for even the 5, 10, 15. And at our size, we just can't take those hits. And so we try to be really circumspect in terms of and we've gotten real good at knowing the value of the case and what cases need to be tried, what cases need to be settled, and working with our clients and educating them. So I prefer to lose a case where a client comes in and I know I probably, just off first bet, I might make $5,000, $8,000 just in terms of that client, but they want $500,000, and I know right now I'd rather lose that money. And here goes the reason why. I'd rather lose that money because they're going to go out and anybody that they meet, they're going to tell them excuse my French, what a shitty lawyer I am. What an unskilled and untrained lawyer I am. Attorney Boysaw, we have made it a practice to, we don't have, there's an old saying, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. So we're not hoggish about it. We're trying to do great work over here.
We'll answer that question, Jessica, too.
Okay, well, what's the question? Why do I have to go through my car insurance to file a claim if the other vehicle caused the accident? Remember, we're in a state where we've got no fault law. It's one of the few that still have this system in place. The idea was, legislature said, listen, if everybody insures themselves, then it's going to cut out fraud that exists in the state. And so what happens is everybody, myself, Kitty, if we have automobiles, we have to sue our own insurance company in that PIP category, that $10,000 in benefit. That's everybody. Now, after you meet that threshold, then you have the right under the law to sue the other vehicle and at least pursue their insurance, or to pursue them. So I mean, technically, you could sue a person, but if they've got this PIP, they're going to get this $10,000. I don't want to get too complicated about it, but they're going to get a set off of this $10,000. So everybody has to sue. If you got any good sense, everybody sues their own insurance to make a claim against their own PIP policy first. After that, then you go after, and it's an insurance. It pays things like your medical bills. It pays a percentage of your lost wages. It pays for things like if you, I had a client one time, they were working on the roof. They got hurt. They couldn't finish it, so they had to bring in a guy. They were doing the roof themselves. They had to bring somebody in, and so PIP will cover benefits like that. There's a $5,000 death benefit if somebody gets killed in a car under PIP. There's a laundry list of benefits that are available to you. But try not to be too long-winded with a complicated area. Jessica Thurman, thanks for the question, but that's the answer. In Florida, you have to go through, make a claim against your own policy first. And then you call somebody like us, and we'll get the other people.
Okay. $1 million for a client that suffered reverse discrimination by an employer.
Right. I am licensed in Michigan also, so
okay.
My
reverse discrimination.
Well, we label it like that because that's the term of art that white folks tend to use. So it was a white woman who worked in a hospital. Who, the supervisor and all of her co-workers and, managers above her, they were all African American. She was married to or had an African American significant other, and so They really were giving her hell. So we went up, tried the case in front of a Michigan jury, and that was the verdict that a jury.
Why Michigan, Bryan?
I have a roommate that went to school there, and so remember I went to the University of Iowa. So the places that I would spend my time in my younger years would be obviously Iowa, but Illinois, Chicago, and Detroit. Those were my stomping grounds back in the day. So it was just probably a natural evolution in terms of practicing up there. In fact, I've got another case we picked up involving a person who was he was in an auto accident, and the as best we can tell, we don't know the circumstances yet, but the medical table, it collapsed on them. So for what was supposed to be and they were in the middle of surgery. So what was supposed to be a 6-hour surgery ended up being a 20-something hour surgery, where they were just trying to put this guy, stabilize him. As a team of about 4, it ended up being about a team of 20-some surgeons, but something happened with the table where it collapsed. We don't know yet, because we haven't gotten to that stage of the discovery, whether there was a defect in the table, which would make it a products defect case, or whether there was negligence on the part of how they set the table, as they were trying to raise the table to the proper height. We don't know all the answers to that, but that is a claim that we're going to be pursuing.
So when you talk about like discrimination, and I think this is more of an education question.
Okay.
If people feel like they're being discriminated against their employers for whatever reason, whether it be sex, religion, race, sometimes those are hard to prove because it's like a hearsay.
Right.
No, we didn't say this. So what would your advice be to people who they think they're being, what type of evidence can they build for their case when they come to you and say, listen, these are the facts, I tried for this job, blah, blah, blah. What are some things that would help you as an attorney?
Okay. Let me first give the disclosure.
Okay.
My expertise, I would say, is not in discrimination cases.
Okay.
I'm a lawyer. I can learn anything. Some cases just jump off the page at me. That one jumped off the page at me.
Okay.
But basically, when there's a discrimination, one of the things you want to make sure is that you got paper. You're putting in your file the acts which you are talking about. You can't sue because, somebody's an asshole at work. But what you can sue for is...
Damn it. Just threw my case out the window. No.
But what you are suing for are acts of discrimination that create what they call a hostile work environment.
Okay, that's what I mean.
And what needs to happen is, believe it or not, so it's topical. For instance, Starbucks coffee, the incident there. It's a little bit different, but one of the things, the designs of discrimination cases, you're supposed to be able to complain that somebody is treating you in a certain way, a hostile way, and it's because of your race. You're supposed to be able to report it, and they are supposed to come up with some solution for it. If they do that, then, hey, everything works out perfectly. The problem gets to be when either your direct supervisor, the person you report to, is discriminating against you, and you're trying to cry out to whomever, and nobody ever does anything about it. Or the coworker who's your equal, they're discriminating and treating you in a hostile way, and you report it to your man, and they do nothing about it. As that builds, at a certain point, and there's no bright line, but at a certain point it crosses over into discrimination. But so you should paper your file, and I tell everybody this early. You're right, it is tough, particularly with conservative courts, in terms of they've got this thing, okay, you have to call somebody a nigger. Well, it was discreet, you only said it one time, that's not enough to really create a hostile work environment. We're not going to find that as a discriminatory action. So it's tough, given how white folks see discrimination versus how we see discrimination. So if your jury isn't filled with people who are your real peers, then the judging on it is going to be different. But I will say one of the easier claims to prove is retaliation, which means I reported a claim of discrimination based upon race. Okay, I might not be able to prove that that person was, but you retaliated against me when I reported it. Meaning you demoted me, you moved my desk out to out to the the water fountain.
The street.
Yeah.
We don't work on the street now.
So I tell people, listen, don't be afraid when you're in that situation, when you're in the hot seat, nobody's listening to you. File that EEOC complaint.
Okay.
That EEOC complaint will give you some back off. It'll keep some people off of you. And if they don't, paper that. But it's a different standard when you're having to prove that. Well, okay, I might not be able to prove that you are racially hostile, but I can prove that because I made this complaint, you now are retaliating against me. That's an easier standard.
Gotcha.
So that's the one thing that when people call here, even though I know I'm not going to take the case, I said, listen, file that EEOC complaint and make sure, maybe take it to definitely try to get it to a lawyer if you can, but if you can't, file it. Make sure that you're making allegations that relate to protected interest, again, religion, sex, weight, race, all of the isms, but make sure you're papering yourself right.
Okay.
That's about the best advice I could give them.
And the one that really was, one was $3 million. I got caught up with the number. I'm like, wow, that was a big win for you, for your law firm. And another one where people are basically killed on properties.
Yeah, I do auto accidents. I got away from trying to advertise everything. We actually handle dog bites, slip and falls, trip and falls.
Dog bites? Wow, really?
In Florida, there's strict liability when a person's dog or animal, they don't have to bite you, but they can lunge at you and make you, fall over and hurt yourself. It still falls under this strict liability standard. But I do all those things. But ultimately, over the years, I found that the thing that keeps us going are auto accidents, trucking accidents. And when I say trucking, I mean like 18-wheelers, large commercial motor vehicles. But our specialty that really gives us a really good foothold is negligent security.
Negligent security, right.
Real quick, negligent security is just that if you own a property, you have a responsibility to provide for security for your guests, for your customers, if it's foreseeable that crime is going to be happening on your property. They use something in Florida called a prior crimes test, which means basically, hey, look, let's pull the police reports and look at the police grids. Has there been crime around here?
Okay.
It's a multi-layered test, but that's the core of it. Once a property owner knows that their property is dangerous, they can't just have you invite you to their property, collect your money, and let you go out and get knocked in the head, or let you get raped, or let you get abducted, or let you get shot or stabbed. They can't do that in Florida because we have laws that deal with it, and it's a specialty area called negligent security. So we have just apartment complexes, malls, restaurants. I mean, we've sued McDonald's, Burger King, Kmart. Sued the mall.
So like you see these stores and like sometimes these gas stations, and they're full of people who are begging for money, and they allow these people to, harass.
Absolutely.
So that's like one of those hate kind of sort of.
Well, all I can say is I got to give you the lawyerly answer on this one. If the store owner knows that the person who's out there, who's loitering, is a troublesome person, then that gives rise to this standard of where he's now got to ensure that that person is trespassed from the property, and if that person comes back on the property, he's got to call the police, he's got to hire security, he's got to take what steps are reasonable steps to ensure that if I'm going to have Kitty London coming up buying gas from here, that person out there that he already knows is problematic. Right. So I don't always have to prove that there is a lot of crime going on if I know as a property owner that I'm dealing with a troublesome cat. It's like, who was the guy in Friday in the neighborhood? Debo. The menace in the neighborhood. Right. So if I know Debo's outside my store, I've got a duty to do something about Debo. It's probably the best way to say it.
Before we go in, Jessica, can you record an employer's discriminating behavior?
Can you record an employer's discriminating behavior? Jessica, you can't audio record. You can visually record. If you audio record somebody, you can do it, but it's illegal to record somebody's voice and then disseminate that. So you have to be real careful, particularly certain states are different in terms of their laws and how they apply this, but you have to be real careful. Here in Florida, you want to be real careful about audio recording somebody secretly and then disseminating that information. So I would
cell phone footage.
Cell phone footage. Yeah, I mean, but again, the footage of it, it's the audio that's the problem. You can do the video so long as they are in a place where there's no reasonable expectation of privacy. For instance, they found in the Starbucks, I'm beating up on Starbucks all of a sudden.
You don't like Starbucks? Would you Dunkin' Donut person?
Tracy is. So I've got to fight for Tracy, and we've got to.
I knew it was a Catholic something. Okay.
But they found a camera in the bathroom. So all right, there's no reasonable people have a reasonable expectation of privacy when they're in the bathroom. So you shouldn't even be audio recording them in that. So really it comes down to expectations of privacy. Are you in a situation where you have a reasonable expectation of privacy? If that's the case, you should not even be really video recording.
Naming restaurants and spots.
I see you, Rochelle.
Yes,
Rochelle, can I catch me some cases there?
I think you probably can. Now, a big one that I want to talk about, I'm sure there are a lot of parents on here and going forward. Summer camp is coming up. And one that you do that caught my eye was minors in age injured due to negligent supervision. Now, I remember as a parent when I would see these forms that you're given through some of the, like I said, summer camps, and they would have, even when you do field trips, they'll have that little disclaimer that'll say, you pretty much have to sign your child away. You can't sue anybody if anything happens. And to me, I kind of felt uneasy when I was looking at that, because I'm like, wait a minute, I am knowingly signing this, saying that if anything happens to my child, I can't do it. That's what it makes you feel. The wording makes you feel. So when you do that, and anything happens to your child, what happens?
Everybody say it with me. Call a lawyer.
Call a lawyer.
Call a lawyer. No, I'm sorry. I was too general. Call Boysaw law.
Okay. But because when you feel like you sign that, you feel like then you can't, because you pretty much written your.
Yeah, you feel that way, and it's designed to make you feel that way.
Okay, listen up, people.
They lose. Defendants in those cases oftentimes get rid of a lot of people who otherwise have valid claims because of what a person believes or based upon what someone is telling them. A waiver is only as good as whatever the legal issue is. In a supervision case, you'd have to see the facts in order to determine whether or not they had a waiver, and I've never seen one in that situation. Because here goes the concept of negligent supervision. You turn your child over to someone, let's say the school. And the school now has a special custodial relationship with that child and ultimately with you, where they're supposed to supervise your child. And if they fall below the standard of what reasonable supervision is, then you have the ability to file a lawsuit against them. If your child is we've represented a lot of children who in the school system where they were, an adult who was not on the sign-out sheet checked them out of school.
What? You talking about face?
Well, listen, you got girls and boys, that hey, look, they're at that age and they're I was thinking about Sister Braswell when you were talking to her the other night, and she was talking about after the things that had happened to her, how she felt about the act. And so when you are young and impressionable, you're going to do some dumb things. And I'm not saying she did anything dumb, but I'm saying I've got students they have that experience of being molested. Then we call them fast. That old girl was being fast. But they're children. You're the adults. Your job is to make sure that if they're not in class, that you are calling, trying to figure out where she is or he is, and taking steps. It's not an excuse, at least from a legal standpoint, that a child acted like a child. You judge children by children's standards, not by adult standards. And so on these negligent security cases, I had a series of them years ago where they were mentally challenged kids. So they couldn't even really communicate to me the fullness of what happened to them. But, you know, just through digging and serious discovery, being dogmatic in our approach, you know, we were able to handle those successfully. They are exhausting, and, you know, when you sue a governmental entity, if it's a federal entity, your fee is down, 20%. If it's like the state or county or something like that, your fee is limited as an attorney to 25%. So it becomes tough for lawyers to maintain a body of that kind of work when you're suing governmental entities. If it's a private entity, I am typically, our charges are by standard are 33 and a third of whatever recovery I get for you. If I have to try the suit, and there are some exceptions to this, but it's 40%. If I'm down in the 20 to 25% and I'm having to invest thousands of dollars, and then the damages are likewise capped, unless you after you get a verdict and you go to what they call a claims bill. You know, I had a case. I'll tell on myself. I was so invested in this case where a boy had gotten sexually battered by another troublesome kid at one of the schools around here. The school offered the family, and ultimately, you know, I was the lawyer on the case, offered about $500,000. Look, we felt that was so unfair. Because if that had been, if my client just happened to have blue eyes and blonde hair and had problems, and what happened to that child happened to them, you know, the offers would have been more. But hey, listen, we tried it well, but we had a jury that brought back a verdict of ultimately ended up being about $300,000. So that was really heartbreaking in terms of you know, just dealing with one. It was I was a lot younger then, and I used to get really emotionally invested in cases. You know, hey, look, I'd cry with clients, and you know, I would really internalize it, and I would really feel it. But you know, it taught me some lessons and some things that I now am able to counsel clients on, just in terms of, you might read in the newspaper this number, that number, you know, and sometimes, you know, people are untrusting of even their own lawyers. So what we try to do is we try to show our clients our own experience, we show them our own cases that are similar to theirs. We have a service here called a jury verdict recorder, where we look at all of the cases that is as similar to theirs as possible, just so that they can see. I mean, every case is so different, but we try to show them that there is some kind of art to this thing. Now, you're going to have outliers on both ends. You're going to have losses that should have been wins, and vice versa. You're going to have, you know, a series, and then you're going to out on the end, that person got $6 million. And then they'll be like, well, no, this isn't enough. But listen, every lawyer is different, and that's why you have to, and it's important at our office, we try to build relationships. I tell my clients, look, the way I was after you to, you know, talking to you when you came in here, look, we can go by the appointment route, but listen, you can just stop by here if you need something from us. My assistant, Dolores, I mean, she's really good. She really is a mini lawyer right now, because she's been doing it for so long. And so if she doesn't feel the question, she lets me know what I need to answer, and so on and so forth. All right, what's going on?
Ms. Boysaw said, I had an accident and immediately started getting calls from lawyers. I don't know how that's possible. Like, your name is being sold. In the distribution list for
that's a big one. In Florida, it's an ethical violation for a lawyer to call you who does not know you and doesn't have a pre-existing relationship with you to solicit your business. Now, what usually happens in my situation is Kitty will say, "Hey, call Saya, call Bryan, call Celicia." Or you know, I have friends that word of mouth has been, you know, how Boysaw law was built and it exists. And you know, I know you see on TV Steiner and Isco, or you see, I had to hit my kid up beside the head one day. He was humming one of those jingles that I'm like, man, if you don't get out of here with that craziness. But word of mouth is, I don't care if you see a million TV ads, word of mouth is the strongest thing. So if you have somebody that you believe in and they tell you to go there, 90% of people, that's what they'll do.
So you shouldn't get solicited by attorneys?
You should not be getting solicited by an attorney who calls you directly. Or even these services, the 911 pain services, they ultimately end up funneling you to a lawyer. This community is so small. I used to know the census data, but there are about 250,000 black folks here in town. This community is so small, especially now with the Facebook. And listen, there are too many good. I don't want to make this racial, and I don't mean it when I say this, but there are too many excellent black attorneys in town. If in the morning the following happened, if lawyers decide, if the black community decided that they were going to use black lawyers who specialize in whatever their need was, most lawyers like me would have to add, I've got 2 stories now, I'd have to add 4 stories on top of this. If we wouldn't be still in the belief system that the white man's ice is colder. Believe it or not, to this day, I still catch those situations where I will have a client who's committed to me, but they'll have family members that are like, no, you gotta go somewhere else. You gotta go somewhere else. And it's tough. It's tough when you're the hurt one and you're relying on family members for it. So I mean, I get it. I get the pressure. But the idea of the way that people, how they perceive what good lawyering is. Look, I've got a structure here that is quite expensive. I have a good long career. Now, if I'm working over at a majority firm, then some people they're okay with that because they believe I've got an overseer, a boss who's kind of helping me along the way. But if I'm standing on my own 2 feet as a man, and we started out talking about this edifice, but the ability to stand on your own 2 feet, to have your own office, to have your own staff, and to have people that you have been working with, and y'all have been taking care of each other for 22 years, it really speaks to your competence. Yeah, and I understand I understand you don't want to be with somebody that's incompetent, but we have this, Kitty, here goes shade on our own people. We have this phenomenon. I wish we would stop. I wish that we would stop.
Preach. I can tell.
I wish that we would stop. If I get bad service from a black professional or at a black restaurant, now all of a sudden, all black professionals, all black lawyers, all black white folks don't have to deal with that psychosis that we still suffer from. And I wish people would catch themselves in terms of how they talk to themselves and how they let other people in our community talk to them about professionalism. One of the reasons Tracy and I relocated this building here, when we came here, it was still, you were talking about, if you say going down on Rosemary, it was like, ugh.
Right.
When I came here, there was one other building, Cityside Suites, Brother Studstill and his family. When I and Tracy were riding by, the only other thing that we had to look at was Cityside Suite, and it was going through a metamorphosis. It was boarded up at the time. They were in the process, but this was about a vision of, if we build something special in the community, we were hopeful that people would take pride in what we're doing, that we're a block away from the courthouse, and that they would use it. And for the most part, they do. And so I'm not crying over that. We have a great base of clients. But our job going forward, me and Tracy, both our boys are going off to college, both FAMU, both FAMU.
Okay.
So they're both going there in the fall. Bryan's returning. My oldest son, Jonathan, who's graduating from Suncoast, he's headed off there. Mr. Brown he gets a hold of a kid and they want to be musicians, don't they? Thank you, Mr. Brown. So my son is going off to to do that. So, in a lot of ways, for me, I'm getting ready to have to go back to work, if you know what I mean. I work hard, but not like when I was younger. I always wanted to make sure I was a part of my boys' life. They knew who I was, and that I was there, and I was at coaching T-ball, and I was at the games, or I was at whatever they were doing. Well, that season is getting ready to transition for Tracy and I, and so it's a recommitment and a doubling up of what we're doing here. And I've actually got to go through some reconnections with community. I've got my old base, but a lot of new faces in town.
Look, a lot of new faces on here too.
That's right.
Look,
that's
okay,
right.
so LaShawn says, Lady of Justice isn't blind. She can see green, black, brown, yellow, and green.
And she can even hear voice intonation, so she knows whether it's some brothers or sisters and or some white folks.
Dolores Johnson, if I am involved in a car accident and I don't
have UM.
Oh, have UM. I'm like, okay. And the other person doesn't have bodily injuries, there's something else I can do. Okay.
All right, let me explain. Let me try to unpack that real quick. Dolores, who works here, and she's excellent at this. So that's a very good question, Lois. If you get in an accident in Florida, it's a high likelihood that the person that hit you is not going to have insurance. They'll be uninsured or underinsured. But if they don't have any insurance, they're uninsured. And if that person hits you and they don't have bodily injury insurance, then the only other place that you can look to for compensation, if there are no other factors affecting contributing to the accident, is to your own policy.
Yeah.
You can go you can go speak to people like I say this because he's my insurance agent, Juan Williams or Charlotte over at Allstate, just other insurance. You can go to them and ask them about how much is uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage. How much does that add to my policy? Because there are a lot of drivers, particularly if you live on the borders or you travel in areas where there are poorer communities. Those people, just because of circumstances, don't have insurance. I mean, they will have the minimum.
Or none at all.
Or none at all. Some people will say, hey, I've got full, I get this a lot. Mr. Boysaw, I got full coverage. Let's do it. Well,
Celicia hates when I say that, because full coverage is...
Well, there is, if they say full liability coverage, now they have said something. But it's a marketing tool when you hear insurance companies say full coverage. Really, they're just talking about the concept of the basic insurance to get you on the road, and that's PIP and property damage. In this situation, if a person didn't have BI insurance, they can't, you could sue a person directly, but, if they don't have assets, then, that's a waste of time. As to the UM, if you sue them for, if you don't have UM, the only other thing that you can do in Florida, and we try to get our clients this, even if we're not going to be able to keep the case, we let everybody know that the state of Florida requires that insurance. So one of the things that you can do is you can go over to small claims court for anywhere between $50 to $300, file a claim, and basically your police report and your testimony and some pictures. And we help our clients figure this out. Get a judgment, final judgment, in small claims, and you can go to small claims up to $15,000, and you send that to the Department of Transportation. Well, not Department of Transportation. Florida's Highway Patrol and Motor Vehicles Department. You send it there, and with the accident report, and if they didn't have any insurance, they will automatically suspend the driver's license of the person operating the vehicle. And if they were in someone else's vehicle who owned it, they will likewise suspend their registration so that they of all of their vehicles. So think about that. So think about that. That works as a good leverage for somebody. And the only way, if you've got a judgment, that can be suspended. Those things can be suspended up to 20 years. So the only way the person gets that off of their back, if they don't have some of the exceptions like work permits or something like that, they got to pay that bill eventually if they want to get life back to normal, where they've got a driver's license and they can register vehicles and drive. And the only way they can do that, if you've got that final judgment in that situation, is to pay that bill. And it's running with interest. So we encourage and assist our people that thought enough to come to us. We encourage them with that additional final process. Everybody doesn't have the money to even do that process, but at least it's something that you can do on your own. We'll give you a little coaching, and once you get that in place, you just continue with life. They're going to call you eventually. You know, if it's somebody that's trying to get on and rebuild and put their life back together, if they're not doing all that, then hey, you just got a piece of paper, and that's what a final judgment can be in a lot of cases.
So the minute you get in an accident, I mean, obviously you want to get medical attention, but the next thing should be is to contact attorneys like yourself.
Yes. Only myself. No, I'm just kidding. There are a lot of great attorneys.
Listen, there's many hit and runs out here, and people just don't, I don't know, they just don't do it.
What, call lawyers?
Yeah, I don't know why. Like, maybe they're thinking how much money it's going to cost me, how much an attorney is going to cost me.
Lawyers who do accident injury cases, if you're paying money to a lawyer based upon an accident injury case, you're getting cheated. You're not really getting cheated. You're doing something that's not smart. Most lawyers in town, if they're dealing with a public that is aware, we do it on a contingency fee basis, which we don't charge you anything unless we get a recovery for you. Some lawyers will say that, and they'll have language in there where they still want some cost money at the end. But good reputable firms, if they don't get a recovery for you and you haven't required them to do something that's excessive, if they don't give a recovery because of no insurance, or it just turned out factually there was something that was killing your case, you shouldn't be spending any money on, because there are just too many excellent accident injury firms out here. So.
Okay. I think I don't know if you answered those questions. Should I give a statement to both insurance companies after the accident?
No. When you say both insurance companies, you got your own insurance if you're doing what you're supposed to do. And I get people who don't have insurance and they come to me. If you're not insured and you get in an accident, you can still call us. We'll still be able to represent you. It's the value of your case will be altered or affected by that. So your own insurance and the other person's insurance, you have to give a statement to your own insurance because you got a contract with them. Don't under any circumstances give a statement to the person's insurance that hit you. You know, they'll say things like, well, we just want to try to find out what happened, and you know, to process this claim, we need to know a little bit more. Do not ever give a statement to a third party's insurer, handwritten, recorded, or otherwise, without the benefit of a lawyer. I don't allow my clients to give those statements. In fact, I tell we have fun with this. When they call and they speak to me or Lois, the third party's insurer, we say, well, listen, okay, I'll do it if you allow me to take your client statement. We never hear from them again.
Right.
So don't do that under any circumstances.
And because I know being putting on my shady boots.
So not the shady boots.
Let's just say your client already has a bad leg. Before they came, I got a little limp in my leg. Got a little off done set in. So boom, Miss Nelson hits me, and oh my God, now she's hurt my neck. But I'm like, well, this leg needs some fixing too. So now my neck, my back, and my legs hurting now.
Okay, all right.
Then I come to you, Mr. Boysaw.
All right.
And then you say, well, what happened? I said, before this accident, I was a dancer, and now I can't dance because of my legs.
Okay, all right.
You see where this is going, right?
Kitty, in these hands, I'm gonna say, come on.
Okay,
won't you come? Won't you come? Listen, that's really what you're
gonna add no to the injury.
Yeah. Really, I think buried within what you say is the concept of I'm already hurt. I get into an accident. Can I still sue? Florida allows for you to sue under something called an aggravation of a pre-existing injury. Now, so, I get clients all the time that have been hurt. They'd hurt their neck previously, or their back, or their leg, as you said.
I think we were talking about that. Why are people denied monetary damages if they are? And I didn't even see your question,
if
Jessica.
They have pre-existing
injuries. Go into it.
Now, the legal theory is there that you have to convince a jury that there was an aggravation of a pre-existing injury. So if I was treating 2 weeks ago for this back injury, and then I have a second vehicular accident, and I had been treating for like a year or two, it's less likely that a jury is going to believe that the that you got an aggravation of a pre-existing injury, they're going to think that that's still the same old injury. So as lawyers, we have to when you get good at this, you got to separate. Sometimes a person will have a particular injury and it's aggravated, and I'll say, well, listen, I think so that you don't muddy the case for jurors, let's focus on your two good new injuries, because I don't think that this is going to add a lot of value to it. But the fundamental concept is, even if you have a pre-existing injury, you need to go see a lawyer, and you need to be honest with them.
Yes, we're going to
that like for instance, if you were telling me you were a dancer and yet you had this leg problem, and then the defense is going to know about it.
I can't get on the pole anymore. That one leg just won't wrap around.
You meant the fire pole, a fireman. That's the pole you was talking about.
No, you know I meant pole.
Where they have them at?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. All right. Anyway, aggravation of injuries. That's why you call a lawyer. They'll figure it out if they know what they're doing. So all of this legal theory ultimately gets you, if you get in front of a jury, the key thing for most cases and the success of cases is your ability to be able to read people and select a juror. If you pick a bell ringer, somebody who's going to who's going to destroy your case, I don't care how good of a case you have. I don't care how clear the facts are. If you've got somebody that's just up in there and, hey, I wouldn't give that person a dime, look, you spent a lot of money and time, but you may not overcome that. So it's so key to your jury becomes in this line of work. If you're a trial attorney, if you're not just settling. Some accident injury lawyers, they just settle cases. But if you try cases, which you get bigger settlements if you're a lawyer known to try cases, because for them they're going to offer you money and it'll be at a certain range. But if they know that, okay, they never offer you top dollar. It's rare that they offer you top dollar, unless it's a case that warrants the tender of the policy. But if you got a case that's got a $500,000 policy and you've got a back surgery, they're not going to offer you the $500,000 in most instances.
Why did it take so long to come? Because I've seen people, they've been waiting on, seems like, rulings for years. I mean, they got hurt way in 1998 by a truck, and it's like, do they hope they heal and forget about it? It seems like, why does it
take long time?
Yes.
Well, sometimes
a
couple of different things can happen. You can have an injury that you have non-union and it doesn't heal, and it takes a while for them to figure out. You can have situations where you have issues that require the case to, things go on where you've got to go to the appellate court. You can try a case, appeal it, it can come back, and sometimes you're going back and you got to try the case all over again.
Oh, Lord. So
that happens to every trial lawyer. I assure you, if they're trying cases, they have been in situations where they have had that 4 to 7 year cycle of a case that it either has gone up on appeal or there's some technical thing that's going on with them. That's not the norm, but if you're a trial attorney, that's going to happen to you. So every case, why it took a long time is going to be different.
Okay. So what advice would you have those people? Hey, Corey Smith, another attorney,
another alpha, another sensational lawyer, a guy who I call when I'm trying to figure out some things from time to time. Brother Smith.
So you give people they a puddle of waters in one of the grocery store, and they slip and fall, and they tell their family, "Girl, you're gonna get $2 million from that." Or you burn your lip. I didn't even realize that when you burnt your lip. Someone burnt their lip at McDonald's and got all this. I'm like, you know how many times I burnt my lip from hot coffee?
Okay.
You get all of these cases, wannabe cases.
Wannabe cases, right.
Is it just a great precaution, no matter what you think, minute or huge, just to call you?
It is always a great precaution to call me. I have even gone so far when I meet people, I tell them this. In fact, I met a young man at the grocery store this morning. I give you my card. And my conversation to you is call me. You don't have to call me when it's an accident. You call me when you have a legal issue. Now, if it's not something in my wheelhouse, I'm not going to handle it. But I can help you narrow down the issues, and I can help you figure out what kind of lawyer you need. And oftentimes, I can refer you to people that I know who I've seen do good work. Of course, everything is different, but our mandate around here, we spend a lot of time on the phone talking to people that we are never going to be paid for, and they're never going to be clients of ours. But
they just call you, random call.
Well, listen, it's kind of a lost leader for me. Just kind of like this show in terms of, okay, I'm going to do this. If I do this show, I'm not sure what my full vision is for it, but once I figure out how to figure other revenue streams from it, but I'm going to pour my heart into this thing. Same thing with when I talk to people for free. The businessman in me is saying, hey, listen, I'm giving you a lost leader. I'm talking to you at no cost. Other people aren't going to spend this time with you. My hope is that if you have something that is what I do, you recognize, hey, wait a minute, I'm the guy that
call it right.
So that's the business philosophy in terms of why we do it. I'm not just sitting around here trying to just talk to people all day about their problems, but ultimately we try to be helpful in that way and try to touch as many people as we can. And it's not one of those things, if you do this today, it comes back to you tomorrow. But man, I've had so much grace in my life that where I did this over here, and man, it was tenfold over here. And I'm a faithful person. I'm a God-fearing person, and I honestly, in my heart of heart, I love helping people. So, and that's grafted onto the people who work here. And so anything that they can do to help, they will.
And Jessica's using this time, and this is what we wanted, because these are questions. And I'm not a lawyer, but I know this is yes. But anyway, can you sue your employer and still work for them? Basically, can you sue your employer for an injury on the job? And if you do, can you still work for them? Okay.
Let me give you two responses to that. The answer is yes. But typically, you're dealing with another area of law called workers' compensation. There are exceptions to workers' compensation that allow you to sue, and they're rare, workers' comp, to breach workers' comp protection. One of the things the legislature did was, we're going to allow people, regardless of fault, to sue in workers' comp, and we're going to pay for your medical bill, a percentage of your medical bills, we're going to pay for your for lost wages and whatever the other structure is in workers' comp. There comes an occasion when people either don't have workers' comp insurance, or they have done something that runs afoul of workers' comp statute, where you're actually able to sue your employer directly. And a lot of times this happens is, you have an employer that has, you have a job where it's in a building, and particularly in negligent security context, you have a company that's in a building, you get attacked. Well, remember, there's a lot of different parts going on. You might not sue your employer, but you're going to sue the property manager. I'm going to sue the security company if they had one. I'm going to sue the owner for negligent security. So sometimes people get confused. They get hurt at work, but there's still other avenues for to pursue for compensation. But the basic question you asked, workers' comp is the structure for most employment injuries, and it just depends on their structure. So whether or not you can sue them directly outside of the workers' comp scheme. It does happen. It's rare, but it does happen.
And lawyers ask, can you keep your car if it has been totaled?
By the insurance company.
Why would you want to keep it? I'm just asking. When I think of total, I'm thinking of trash. Like, I don't even want to see
total really just deal with the concept of it's going to cost, it's damage, and the damage exceeds the value of the car. That's the basic concept of a car being totaled. The insurance company is going to want you to sign that car over, but there are circumstances where you can negotiate. We've done it successfully in the past, where we've negotiated with the insurance company. Okay, well, why don't we allow you to pay a little bit less, allow this guy to keep his car, and go on and forth. So there are circumstances where that can happen, and actually Lois probably needs to be on here answering this question, because she's the one that handles that all the time.
Okay. What is Rochelle talking about?
Use the big case you won for us, where you sued everybody.
Everybody's in caps too.
The temp agency and the property owner. Shell, you talking about the forklift or what? What are you talking about?
He don't want so many cases. He asking which one.
I'm just. Yeah.
Which big one did you?
Yeah.
I know you had a $6 million one on as well too.
Yeah.
Listen, when I hear stuff like that with a defective tire, I'm like, yes, that's a lot of money, but baby, you're gone. Fatality, that means you're done. You're right.
Say that again.
Somebody died.
Yeah.
Well,
let me do this.
Okay.
Usually, if you have a case where you have a person, a death
defective tire.
A death case may be actually worth, in terms of valuation, worth a lot less sometimes than if you have somebody who is seriously injured, where they
have to keep on getting help, right?
Yeah, because they've got a lifetime of medical bills. They've got a lifetime of loss of earning capacity. So oftentimes, cases where people are significantly injured and impaired, the value on those cases, believe it or not, will be, multiple ordinances higher than, say, somebody in a death case.
Wow.
And again, what the value of the case and the life is, it's going to depend upon that jury, and they put different values on different lives.
She said yes, so I guess the court.
Yeah. Man, I don't really like to make the specific cases, but the concept here is just people not maintaining their property properly, and we have instances where people are operating machinery on the property, and they drive through poorly maintained property. And in that instance, again, most of the time you're going to look for products defect. You're going to try to search out whether or not there was something defective about the product, whether or not the landowner had the ultimate ability to cure whatever the problem was, the defect on the problem. If they do, we're going to go after them. Our job is to turn over as many rocks as possible, and we're going to look everywhere that there is. I have a if you have an intersection collision, particularly in certain parts of the county or city, typically you're always going to want to check for the following. You're going to want to check to see whether there was a site obstruction at the intersection. A lot of times those contribute significantly to two people who actually were involved in the accident. They did it because neither one of them could see each other. So I get a lot of those. And I love all my cases, but that's one. Because I used to work at the county, any road engineering design, maintenance of traffic case, that's all I did primarily when I was over at the county, working with the county engineering department. So I've developed an expertise in that kind of work.
Corey Smith, talk about tort reform and its effects on our ability to get justice.
Oh man, Corey, that's a big one. I'm not even sure how to approach talking about tort reform right now.
And we what is tort reform?
Well, tort reform is just the structure of when you sue for negligence or personal injury. It falls within this umbrella of tort reform. And there are a lot of different aspects. Medical malpractice, slip and falls, trip and falls, negligent security, auto accident. Right now, the state of Florida is there's a fight every year as to whether or not we're going to keep this PIP structure in the state of Florida. And believe it or not, it's the insurance.
Just from the standpoint of voting.
From the standpoint of voting, tort justice reform from the standpoint of voting. Now, brother, you're gonna have to give me one more.
Is it a yes or no vote? Is it a?
Just from the standpoint of voting and tort reform. Corey, you're over my head this evening, sir, and I'm not ashamed to say it.
He got you with that one. Okay,
I'm just not sure what he means.
Type a little more. Okay, type a little more, Corey. We're going to get back to that. Yeah. I wanted him to, because I know when Edric was on, we talked about, I want to talk about you because I think you were the
Brother
founder.
Boris, I see you there. Man, how you doing?
Mr. Food Network. Talk real quick about your community. I call it the block party. I didn't go, but I heard it was absolutely fabulous.
Oh, man. What you were referring to is the bourbons and bow ties. We had
Bourbons and bow ties.
Our second annual bourbons and bow ties. One of the things at the earlier part of this this segment we were talking about was this historic Northwest area and the growth here and people's perceptions about here. I have people who actually they'll say, why you build over there, man?
Wow.
And when I say people, I mean my people. They say, well, why would you put all that money over there, man? And you know, I'm quick to even go to the news recently and say, listen, well, folks ain't stabbing nobody in the neck while they eating here. Give me the shit. Yeah, they not stabbing people by the bridge over here. Listen, I've been over here. I've been here 8 years, Kitty.
No stabbing over here. No stabbing.
Listen, there have been a series of shootings when the young Thundercats are after each other. But in terms of people who are working and living here, working, you don't ever hear about anybody getting hurt.
That's true.
I get so much respect from the guys in the community here. And listen, again, 8 years. You know, nothing significant has happened. You might have had some car break-ins nearby, so on and so forth. But listen, I'm going to tell you one of the more dangerous places relative to prior crime history, the parking garages down at City Place. Again, the rapes and the attacks and the assault and batteries, it's so crazy. We get stuck with the label, more crime incidents goes on over there. The young people who shoot each other, that gets all the headlines. But, you know, I feel safer here than I do going down to City Place. So, you know, and I tell people, it's so funny. What's really funny is the people, sometimes they'll say it, and I know where they work, and I've had a case nearby, and I'm like, man or lady, if you only knew how much crime goes on in the vicinity of where you work, you would be ashamed of yourself. But you scared. You think you're scared to come down to the historic Northwest, 501 North Rosemary. But we haven't had an incident here in the entire time.
Corey, the fan is needed. Let me tell you.
That fan is something else.
It's shade.
You get a little breeze off of it, Corey.
It's shade.
It's shade. It's shade.
So, okay, so you said, well, let me throw a block party.
Okay, block party. So
and
block party.
The name, bourbon?
Okay.
Who drink bourbon?
I started that to say.
That's my own shade.
I started that to say one of the ideas that we were having, when you have a community that has a reputation from past, you have to figure out ways to try to transform people's experience and exposure to the community. Okay. And so one of the things we wanted to do, myself, Darren Studstill, Tracy, my wife, Shanitria, and Egypt Barnes. One of the things we wanted to do was to have a, for lack of a better way to describe it, a luxury branded experience right here in the historic Northwest, so people could start to understand the possibilities and start to feel what we're saying when we say, hey, look, the investment opportunity is here. People that know, the people that know A-Law, hey, they recognize the investment opportunity. Indigo Hotel, they recognize the opportunity. They're dropping $10 million down at the Sunset Plus. They recognize that there's going to be business opportunities here. It is probably easily one of the most developing areas that I know about relative to what's slated to come. So we wanted to give the community, and we wanted to focus on, it's open to everybody, but we wanted to try to use our respective Rolodexes and get the people that we do business with the most down here. We're in a CRA, and we went to the CRA, the executive director over there is John Ward. We went over to John, and we started talking about some of the events that they did. Nice, but we were like, we think we can do it because we got more vested in it. We think we can do a better job. No disrespect to the CRA and the jobs that they do, but you know, there's a process to this thing. We just thought that in seeing what was offered to the community, we thought that we could just do a better event. I think we're successful in terms of what the other comparative events are, and we're trying to grow that, and we're trying to grow that through people who look like us, who do business with us. And again, that's not to the exclusion our white brothers and sisters, our Asian brothers and sisters.
Well, you had a little bit of mix, a little bit.
Oh, yeah,
I saw some pictures on Facebook.
We have a mix, but anytime that something goes on, and you look up and see the mixture in that room, it usually is about who was at the helm of the invitations, and you're going to invite people that you're familiar with and know. It's hard to invite people you don't know, and if you invite them, they don't come. So our event looks the way that it does in terms of the optics. Again, because that's who Cityside Suites, Boysaw Law, Barnes Law, that's who we do business with.
Right.
And our goal is to, but those are the people who do the work. But we make sure that Queen of Sheba, who's over here, we make sure like Shalicia, she's got a law firm over here. Anybody that's I'm trying to think of the liquor store over here, Frank's Liquor Store. Anybody that does business, we try to make sure that they are a part of that event from a marketing standpoint and from a just let's come have a great time. The idea of bourbons and bow ties, it came from this concept. In a 1942 newspaper, what's it called? It's not the Final Call, but it's one of the NAACP older newspaper. If you look at that newspaper, it shows what was here in the 1940s, and you see the guys nattily dressed with bow ties on, and they're at the bar. I mean, we had some
cigars. I saw the cigars.
All of that stuff, and so that was kind of the idea. Let's have us an affair that harkens back to yesteryear, and. So Darren Studstill, it was his brainchild. He ultimately then enlisted Shemitria. They then ultimately enlisted me and Tracy's support.
Well, shout out, because I hate the nice of it. Like it's amazing. You're definitely getting kudos for it.
Okay, well listen, we're trying to grow that event. We believe we might have had upwards of 250. 300 people this year. We're trying to grow that event and get that number up to about 500 at this location. We got a bigger vision and kind of with ideas. You don't want to fully unroll that, but we got at least one more year if we continue to get the support we're getting to do it here. But once the Sunset comes online, we've got another iteration of what we're doing. Okay. But it's still in the Bourbons and Bow Ties family. Cigars. Hey, listen, when I'm not doing this and I'm not with my kids and I'm not with the beautiful Miss Tracy, I am playing poker. I am smoking cigars.
He's a poker player.
I'm drinking me some bourbon somewhere, and I'm being silly with some guys. So that's me when I'm just socializing. Okay.
So getting back to Corey real quick, because I know. Look, see, doesn't it? Look at what time it is. It goes. Doesn't it go back?
Oh wow!
I know.
Meaning how Republican politics have limited the ability to get justice. Okay. Well, listen. There's so many places to kind of start here. If you talk about the dissemblance of the Attorney General's office and the rollbacks that a conservative court has relative to the ability for black folks to vote. I tell all folks, when I'm talking to young people in particular, they say, why should I vote? I said, well, listen, most people vote on one, maybe two issues, but most people vote on one issue that directs their thinking. You got people who are, against abortion. Anybody that's not supporting trying to roll back Roe v. Wade, that's all they need to hear. If you're not trying to undo that law, that's the shifting issue for black people. I believe this, and we're not monolithic in our thinking, but I believe
that's a big word, boy. I gotta Google that one.
We're not singular in our thinking and our walk.
Okay.
But the most pressing issue, I believe, for the next 50 years facing African Americans and the stuff that we see on the news every day is the court, the conservative court. In the 9th District, which is kind of the San Francisco area, Trump just announced, look, there are 7 new openings out there. He just announced I'm getting ready to make that all conservative. If he does that, that's an essential shift in the court out there. And the only thing that's been stopping a lot of the lot of the DACA and all of his assaults on that issue has been the Ninth Court. That's been the salvation. You know what it's like if you've got a conservative court versus what they call a liberal court. All of the politics aside, I just think black people, if we focus on the fact that even in local elections, it is who sits on that bench that is so key to what's going to affect you locally and what's going to affect you in the long term if you're talking about the federal courts. I think that I try to encourage people to think about that. Most people are educated that, hey, look, my vote's not going to make a difference because this neighborhood is going to be gentrified and the money's going to go there. But if you vote and you have a voice that's heard and you're focused on things that are really immediately important to you, things like education, but I just think the courts are so important for black folks to be voting on. I mean, think about in the state of Florida. There is fortunately there was a federal court judge that has said that, look, we're going to restore voting rights for the disenfranchised people who have felonies on their record.
Yes.
Now that vote ultimately, essentially, is going to be on the ballot in November. And so the one great thing about that is the Bondi and the governor, they have agreed that they're going to appeal that federal court decision, but it may be all for naught. Hopefully that the good voters in the state of Florida will say, hey, listen, if a person has served their time, why would you keep them disenfranchised from voting?
For life.
Well, we know why, but it really makes a person come out, and if you're hopeless because you can't even vote and you have no stake in what's going on with you, if you find yourself in that situation, hey, yeah, you're gonna have a high recidivism rate in terms of you going back to crime, because hey, look, you're
not even vested.
You're not vested. You can't. You paying taxes, and you can't vote on who the next mayor is going to be, the next politician that may impact what decisions are going to be made in your life. You know, that really is a bum and unfair and a racist rap that has existed since post-slavery. So I just really encourage all young people, all old people, to stay with that voting thing. You know, you don't have to be excited by Barack Obama being in the race. I vote every race. I vote in races that I'm like, I'm not even sure who's in this race. I make it over there, and I will figure out who's on it. But that's just something that's instilled in me and been instilled in my parents. Hopefully it's instilled in my children, and we at least raising a household full of voters over there.
Before you go, and speaking of young, Jessica has a question. Do you have partnerships with high school choice programs who major in law, teen college internships?
Listen, we usually try to get, we usually have an intern here. I won't say it's happened every year, but for the most part, we usually have interns here, and a lot of them are either high school to college or college to law school. It just depends upon what's going on with us this summer. We partner with Palm Beach Lakes High School. Now we don't have it as an official structure, but that's always been one of my favorite high schools in terms of where we spend our contributions. Last year we had a group of kids. I'm glad you said it, because I got to reach out to the instructor over there. Last year, the Gerald Williams Academy over there, we hosted all of the kids that were in that program here in my office, and lawyers, and our first elected black judge, Bradley Harper, who hadn't first been appointed by a governor. He came, Phil Hutchison. We just had an entire group of lawyers in here. I can't think of the number of kids, but it was a lot of kids here. And we broke up into sections, just having conversations with them. The idea behind that was so that there would be mentoring opportunities created. I don't know how successful that's going, but I know we've got a willing group of lawyers here who, when they get, we got to be nudged a little bit, because we're it's tough out here just making a living. But I know that everybody has a heart to do it. And I got somebody from the school called me this week, I believe. So don't have a formal program, but we participate a lot, and we write some really decent sized checks for Palm Beach Lakes relative to the band. We're gearing up for the football program over there, and just when there are needs. Our dear Monica is no longer over there, but we still got some loving people over there that we try to support.
Well, I want because we always go over. Always go over. But I want to thank you because I know you're busy, and you gave me an hour and a half, and you gave the community an hour and a half to know a little bit more about you.
Boy, I hope I didn't put y'all to sleep today, because I know it's.
No, you didn't. Now you kept some viewers. So you got some hearts in life. So, is there anything that you think you forgot or you want to mention that you didn't cover?
No, listen. I probably in the order of importance. I give it the
PH.
I give just perspective on me is. I love my father, mother, my family, my wife, and my kids, and that ultimately is number one. Number two is I'm a very loyal person, and when I have friends, they generally tend to be friends for a lifetime.
Is that a frat thing?
That's an A5. That's Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Okay. You know this.
Really, I did, but.
I'm not. I unabashedly, and I'm not ashamed to say I love this community. I love the people in it. I love the blessing of being able to do what I do. Doing what I do has me meeting new friends like yourself, and I'm so proud of what you are doing. I know my wife probably was hounding you, so you got to get my husband.
She wasn't hounding me. See, but listen, one thing about it is when she did mention it, but. I looked you up. I do my little research. Okay. I have reasons for picking certain guests, and I guess I'll let that out one day. Okay. But you were very intriguing, and I like to see, like I said, I like to see people who are transparent.
Yeah.
I really do. Very interesting interview. Thank you for sharing your life experience with us. And that's the big thing. A lot of times people get so caught up in people that they see on TV all the time. They forget about we have local rock stars that are doing great things for the community. Everybody that I've actually had on the show, I personally had a takeaway.
Okay, all right.
And that's a great thing.
Okay, well, good.
So if you had to give a superpower away, because everybody on People Power, I think, are powerful in their own right. So if you had to give a superpower away to anyone, what would the superpower be?
Give a superpower away.
You have to give a power away that you feel that people may be needing right now or missing, but something that you can give them if it had to be a superpower. I would give people the power of discernment, if I'm understanding your question. You're right. You're understanding it right.
And the reason I would give that to a superpower to them is because as a community, and doing business with one another, we could change all of our destinies tomorrow if we were more mindful of that. And I know that there are people, and we talked about this earlier, I know that there are people who sit there and say, hey, well, look, that business over there is not this and not that. Listen, I'm not going to say it's easy, but look, it ain't easy for white folks. When you move into their neighborhoods, they move out. It ain't easy, but they have a commitment to one another that doesn't include you, and that doesn't make you racist because you say, listen, because we've been disenfranchised for so long. One of the things we need to do is to support one another in our business. Isn't it crazy? We need to support each other in our businesses so that look, we're the ones that we're writing checks, and we're doing the mentorships, and we're doing and kids are going to look, and the community is going to look to people that look like them in terms of some of their next steps. Now, some of those next steps may be out of the community, out of the neighborhood fully, but there are people that, hey, their steps was back to the community. back to the neighborhood. And I just say, listen, if you have discernment in terms of whether people are excellent in what their presentation is and what their business is, you won't be blinded by some. One of the worst things I get is people come and say, hey Bryan, Mr. Boysaw, could you take a look at this? And I look at it and it's a settlement closing statement for an accident injury case. Now, young me used to get pissed. Old me recognizes that people who get into accidents, they seem to get into them again, or know people that do. But they're sitting there asking me to critique
somebody
else's, whether they're being treated fairly in their settlement. So that means that when you were dealing with this person, you never felt like they were treating you fairly. And it's okay to question those things, but when they bring it to me and it's not, it ain't Celicia wasn't handling it, and none of the other African American accident injury lawyers, and it was somebody else. I'm like, okay, you had a lot of excellent choices in terms of people with great experience and people with an excellent track record. But now part of it too is we've got to get the word out there. And so I don't blame them, because top of mind is a tough marketing concept, and you got to either be doing high volume, high rotation, or you got to have you a good team of disciples. So discernment to know that you've got qualified and capable people in our community that can get the work done. So that's the superpower I want all people, but particularly our people, to have.
And I like you didn't even realize what you have done, because you've mentioned other attorneys. That speaks volumes already about you. Man,
listen,
I'm just telling you, because let me tell you, people usually don't talk about other people that are in the same field. It's kind of like, this is my moment.
Because they're being silly. Listen, if there's a Sears Denny law firm, and a Gordon and Donna, and a Lytle and Ryder, and a list goes on and on and on, clearly this community can support probably the handful of African American, and we're talking specifically about accident injury lawyers right now, but even in the other category, clearly we got enough folks in here to support, amongst us, where we shouldn't be fearful of, like, hey, listen, you know what? Celicia does she does the pharmaceutical stuff, and that's really not mine. So she's a pharmacist. Maybe you should go to her on that. And look, when I refer a case to a lawyer and they accept it, I get I'm entitled to what we call a referral fee. So I want to know who all of the great lawyers are, and I have cases that, listen, for some reason or another, I'm not the best lawyer for it, and I refer cases. I get cases referred to me from other lawyers in town. So anybody that's into the whole, I can't uplift somebody else who does my business, and that's just not good business sense. But to each his own. I find that if I can create enough, put enough out there for enough other people in the world, I have more than enough for my journey.
Amen.
And so I'm not fearful about that, and I'll say another lawyer's name in a minute.
And that's true. People do me like, someone's still doing the show. Oprah didn't care about Ayana.
I see my Oprah right here. We got our own Oprah.
I thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
For anyone who is watching, please share the video. He's given a lot. It's not about me. It's really about him.
It's about us.
Well, yes, but it's his show this evening. And just like you said, please share if you know anyone who's in need of the attorney. Like you said, we have enough here that we don't have to call outside.
Hey, yeah. I mean, look, I could go on and on.
We don't want to call you, because when we call, that means we're hurt.
No,
but obviously we know who to call.
I gotta have you calling me.
We know who to call.
Hey, I gotta have you calling me, kid.
Right, that's true. Well, we know who to call. Thank you, Tracy, for setting everything up.
Yes, Tracy.
Hopefully she didn't fall asleep in the back.
Oh yeah, she would tell me to do this. Boysaw Law.
Yeah, we got to do the phone number too.
Boysaw Law, and Tracy probably will put it up. Boysawlaw.com, and then our telephone number is 650-1481, or any numbers through 1481, 1482, 1483, all the way up to I think maybe 5. But our primary number is 650-1481. You can find us online on Facebook. I'm always reading the newspaper and posting the first things I see that I think are interesting, just because it's a stream of consciousness. But call us. We're here. We're responsive, and we'll come see you if we need to.
Wow.
We love to have you down and meet our staff and see our office and see what we're working with.
It's a beautiful office. And where's your office located?
It's at 501 North Rosemary. I'm a block away from the courthouse, probably 2 blocks up from the West Palm Beach Police Station. On North Rosemary. If you go towards City Place, that's South Rosemary. In fact, there's a 501 South Rosemary. A lot of my clients, they'll go there.
Well, listen, if you're looking for the big 2-story building with Boysaw written all over it,
I should have just said that.
Yeah, that's all you had to say.
That's all I had to
Make
say.
it easy.
Just make it
2-story
easy.
building with my name on it.
I'm too wordy sometimes, huh?
No, just put 2-story with my name on it. That sounds a little cocky, but it sounds good. 2-story building with my name on it.
My
name on it. With my name on it. Can't get lost with my name on it. I want to be like you when I grow up. See, there you go. Tracy, right on time.
Look at that phenomenal woman.
All right, so remember,
Thank you,
please,
love.
everybody, thank you for joining us tonight. And yeah, please share the video. We'll see you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Bye.
Kitty, so
Oh,
much.
you're welcome.
I enjoyed it.
No problem.